Hey everyone, thanks very much for voting in the poll to decide today's video topic. It was closer than normal, but you guys decided that we should talk about the blue blazer today. The poll options were decided by myself with the help of the Wrestling Bios channel members. And remember, if you'd like to support me and my work, please consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below this video or on my channel's homepage. Channel members also get access to my weekly audio show, Wrestling Bios Weekly, that's been getting some great feedback. So if you'd like to help me out and show your support, please do consider joining. So let's get started then as we take a look at the blue blazer in the WWF. Gaining an understanding of the blue blazer will require us to take a look at the man who portrayed the character, Owen Hart, before he made his way to the WWF. More so, we need to understand that Owen Hart was making an incredible amount of noise in the wrestling scene before he ever got to New York. Born on May 7th, 1965, Owen Hart was the last of Stu and Helen Hart's 12 children. Raised in the family's 21-room red brick mansion on a hill overlooking Calgary, Owen was exposed to wrestling every day during his childhood. Owen's widow, Martha Hart, explained in her book that Owen tried numerous times to earn a living without stepping into a wrestling ring, but things never seemed to work out in Owen's favour. Owen's older brothers were, of course, wrestling for Hart family patriarch Stu Hart's Stampede Wrestling and making names for themselves in Calgary, but that lifestyle is something that Owen tried to avoid. It's been reported that Owen wanted to become a physical education teacher, but Owen was, however, also an exceptional amateur wrestler in high school, and it was a wrestling scholarship that got him into university. He had won city and provisional championships, and with all his brothers wrestling and his father being the Calgary wrestling legend Stu Hart, it was like Owen had no other choice but to become a pro. On top of this, the Hart family had a ring set up outside their house, and Owen was already performing backflips from the top rope and showing athleticism that big brother Brett admitted that not many pros could do at the time. Brett said that Owen also enjoyed watching the high flyers of Stampede Wrestling. Stu would bring in Japanese wrestlers that Owen really enjoyed studying. In the end, with his amateur background and athletic ability from an early age, it seemed like Owen was just too good not to wrestle. Owen's very first professional wrestling match actually saw him wearing a mask, but it wasn't the blue blazer mask, of course. Owen said in an interview, "The first match I ever had was when I was still in university. I had to go incognito and wear a mask, and I teamed up with the Dynamite Kid. I wrestled as the British Bulldog under a mask, so yes, I was the original British Bulldog, and I was about 18 years old when I done that. I then went to England and had my first match as Owen Hart. I wrestled as Bronco Owen Hart in the Royal Albert Hall in London. I was just a young kid then too." Owen came back to Calgary after working in England, and it was here when Owen got some intense training from Stu Hart in the Hart family dungeon. Around this time, Brett, Jim Neidhart and the British Bulldogs had moved away from Stampede and were working in New York, and Stu Hart needed a Hart brother to carry on the family name within Stampede. Owen began working in Stampede and, almost instantly, he became a sensation. His aerial offense was seriously unique. Even the Japanese guys who had came into Stampede couldn't do the things that Owen was doing, and he was making headlines within months. Chris Jericho recalls seeing Owen in Stampede for the first time. "I'll never forget the first time I saw Owen Hart. I saw Owen do all these things I'd never seen before, like backflips from the top rope, moonsaults. He would jump on a guy's back and perform a backflip off. All of these fantastic things I'd never seen. I was a big fan of Randy Savage, the Rockers, Coco Beware, and all these smaller guys in wrestling, but they never done things like that. That's when I decided I wanted to be like Owen Hart." While working in Stampede, Owen would also travel to England to work for Max Crabtree. Those who watched my William Regal videos would remember that Crabtree had the ability in the UK to get matches put on TV, specifically on ITV's World of Sport programme. This gave Owen an opportunity to not only show off his skills to a fresh audience, but it also helped him get better at his craft by working against competitors with vastly different wrestling styles. Likewise, when Owen travelled to Japan to wrestle several tours with New Japan Pro Wrestling, he was exposed to another new style of grappling that seriously helped Owen become a better competitor. In 1987, when Owen worked in New Japan, he wrestled Kaiichi Yamada, the man who would go on to become Jushin Thunder Liger before Yamada took on the Liger gimmick. Owen also became the first Gaijin to win the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship. These accolades, along with Owen's in-ring ability, secured him the PWI Rookie of the Year award in 1987. So what we have here is a wrestler who has made a name for himself outside of the WWE. He is young, he is extremely talented, and he is a Hart brother. It would make sense for the WWF to sign Owen and showcase his unique hybrid style to the world, but the whole origins of the Blue Blazer character and even Owen's introduction to the WWF is something that we have conflicting information on. Bret Hart said that it was he who got Owen signed by the World Wrestling Federation, and Bret also said that it was he who suggested that Owen should work under a mask. In the Owen Heart of Gold documentary released by the WWE, Bret Hart said, "It was me who made the suggestion to Vince that Owen should come in as a masked wrestler. It was an idea that I had for myself. If things didn't pan out for me in the Hart Foundation at the time, I was going to go to Japan under a mask. It turned out that the Hart Foundation thing was going well and I didn't need that as a backup plan, so I tossed it out there to Owen and Vince. I said to Vince that they could sell the masks and Owen could be a huge marketing opportunity if he turned out to be a star." Other reports, however, state that Vince McMahon was the one who came up with the idea to put Owen under a mask, simply because he didn't want there to be any connection between Bret and Owen, and he also felt that being the younger brother of Bret would hold him down. Remember, Owen had made quite a name for himself outside of the World Wrestling Federation. Casual fans may not have known who he was, but people who bought the magazines and followed the business closely knew that there was a younger Hart brother out there that was doing some seriously exciting work. We all know that Owen's star would really shine when he was reintroduced as a Hart brother within the WWF, but upon his debut, it's been said that Vince McMahon wanted Owen to work as a masked, high-flying superhero who had no ties to Bret Hart or the Hart Foundation. Of course, the first thing many people will think here is that this is another perfect example of Vince McMahon taking an established superstar and giving him a dreadful gimmick, but keep in mind that the Blue Blazer made his WWF debut in 1988. It was a different time, the WWF was catering for a very young demographic here, but I do agree that Owen didn't need the Blue Blazer character, and hindsight being 2020, he did get way more over by just being himself. According to Bruce Pritchard on his Something to Wrestle podcast, Vince loved the cartoon character Mighty Mouse as a kid, and he always wanted to create a wrestling gimmick based on the character. This isn't the first time we have heard of this either. Many of you will recall that when Adrian Neville, or Pac, was getting called up from NXT to the WWE main roster, that there was rumblings that he was going to debut as a Mighty Mouse inspired character. It sounds ridiculous, but put nothing past Vincent Kennedy McMahon. You may look at Mighty Mouse here and think that the Blue Blazer looked nothing like Mighty Mouse, but Pritchard said that Vince's correlation here was that Owen would be a small superhero who wears a cape. So let's try to pinpoint the Blue Blazer's very first match. The first date we have here is July 8th, 1988, and it's the Blue Angel defeating Terry Gibbs. So who is this Blue Angel? According to Bruce Pritchard, Owen Hart was never officially named the Blue Angel, and this was a mistake made by ring announcers during Owen's first matches in the World Wrestling Federation. Bruce said that the ring announcers just accidentally called him the Blue Angel, and over the course of a few weeks, the name was fixed. We get more conflicting information here when researching this online, as it's been reported that the Blue Angel was always supposed to be Owen's ring name, but apparently the United States Navy wasn't happy with the WWF using the name Blue Angel, due to the name also being used for the Navy's flight squadron. In this case, I'd be more inclined to believe Bruce Pritchard's story. The simple explanation is usually the correct one, but who knows. It does seem odd though that Owen worked around 10 matches as the Blue Angel before the name was fixed. It's also been reported that Martha Hart, Owen's girlfriend at the time, designed and created the Blue Blazer's first mask and entrance gear. Martha, along with a friend, apparently designed the first Blue Blazer mask you see here in this picture, and according to Bret Hart, nobody liked it, including Owen. Owen didn't want to hurt his girlfriend's feelings, so he wore the mask, but eventually the WWF's wardrobe department came up with their own idea of what the Blue Blazer should look like. Which mask do you think was better? Remember too that Bret Hart isn't on great terms with Martha Hart and vice versa, so take this mask story with a pinch of salt. So Owen went out there and set himself apart by performing the insane springboard moonsaults, the backflips, and the high-flying offense that made him such a hot commodity during the 80s, all while being lumbered with this superhero gimmick. The Blue Blazer was in the land of the giants. He was so much smaller than many of his peers, but what set him apart was his gifted wrestling abilities. He got a ton of wins during his first months within the WWF, many working against the likes of Iron Mike Sharp, Steve Lombardi and Barry Horowitz here. Donnie Davis was another consistent opponent for the Blue Blazer, and you can tell here where Vince McMahon felt the Blue Blazer fitted into his match cards. It was quite low. Again, land of the giants. The Blue Blazer made his WWF pay-per-view debut at the 1988 Survivor Series, where his team, which was led by the Ultimate Warrior, were victorious in a traditional Survivor Series matchup. However, Owen was eliminated by Greg Valentine during this showdown. From here, Owen resumed working in the mid-card, scoring wins over lesser opponents while never being able to defeat bigger names. He lost to the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase on Saturday night's main event in February of 1989, and at WrestleMania 5, Mr. Perfect defeated the Blue Blazer in just over 5 minutes. What's striking though is that after this loss to Mr. Perfect, the Blue Blazer went on to job to just about everybody for the remainder of his tenure with the WWF. Daniel Bryan put it very well on Owen's DVD when he said, "Owen was an amazing performer. I'm a huge wrestling fan, so I saw Owen wrestle in places other than the WWE. I saw him wrestle in Stampede, I saw him wrestle in Europe, I saw him wrestle in Japan for the IWGP Junior Championship, and he was amazing. He was amazing everywhere he went. So it was kinda disappointing to me looking back at how the WWE used Owen at first." It's pretty clear here that the WWF didn't know what they had with Owen Hart. It was all about the huge guys doing the big boots, the leg drops, all that stuff, and it's also clear that Vince McMahon felt that his audience would not accept the Blue Blazer as a legitimate main event player. Now, I'm not saying for a moment that Owen Hart should have been put in pay-per-view main events and given world titles within his first year, but I do think that the gimmick hurt him to a certain extent when it came to credibility. Add to this that he never got any kind of big wins against even upper mid-card competitors, and you notice here that the Blue Blazer was seemingly destined to fail. Owen was showcasing stuff never seen in World Wrestling Federation rings before. He was awe-inspiring to watch, but the WWF were not ready to showcase this kind of wrestling on a big scale, which is a shame. But again, it was a different era. Owen noticed that the writing was on the wall and he decided to get out of the WWF before he became a permanent job guy. Brad said that he suggested to Owen that he should leave before he is stuck in losing positions for the remainder of his career, but apparently Owen had already came to the same conclusion. It's crazy to think that the initial incarnation of the Blue Blazer didn't even last a year in the World Wrestling Federation. It feels like the character was there for a longer time, but Owen wrestled as the Blue Blazer in the World Wrestling Federation for the very last time on the 26th of June 1989, taking a loss to Barry Horowitz in New York. The Blue Blazer character was done in the World Wrestling Federation, for the time being anyway, and Owen went back to Stampede Wrestling. Owen then would find work once again in Japan. He would also work in Germany. He even worked in WCW before returning to the WWF in December of 1991 as part of the new Foundation tag team. Seemingly, the Blue Blazer character was completely done with. Fast forward to 1998, and as we all know, the Blue Blazer character would reappear in the World Wrestling Federation. Owen had made a name for himself with his King of Hearts character, a slimy but entertaining heel who would claim that he was the greatest of all the Hart brothers. He eventually teamed up with brother Bret as part of the 1997 version of the Hart Foundation, and when Bret left the WWF, Owen became the sole survivor, the Black Heart, the last Hart left in the World Wrestling Federation. He eventually joined the Nation, and after that group had fizzled out, he found himself tagging with Jeff Jarrett. At the time, Jarrett was being escorted to the ring by Deborah McMichael. The story goes that the WWF higher-ups wanted Owen involved in a storyline that would see him becoming infatuated with Deborah. It's quite common knowledge that Owen Hart was a family man, and he refused to play this role of a man becoming obsessed over another woman. So it was decided instead that Owen would put on the Blue Blazer attire once again and revive the character. Many see this as a punishment for turning down the Deborah storyline, but who knows. The timing does match up though, I'll admit that much. So let's just go back a little. On the September 20th, 1998 edition of Monday Night Raw, Owen had a match with Dan the Beast Severn. Owen dropped Dan with a piledriver, the same piledriver that had legitimately injured Steve Austin a year prior at SummerSlam 97. This spot here though with Severn was part of a storyline where Owen would seemingly retire due to him feeling guilty about this injury. Just 2 weeks after the Dan Severn match, the Blue Blazer showed up to attack Steve Blackman and Ken Shamrock. The Blazer would then assist Jeff Jarrett, and this is really when the Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart team began working together. On the November 2nd edition of Raw in 1998, the Blue Blazer helped Jeff Jarrett attack Val Venus, and afterwards, Owen came to the ring to remind fans he was retired and he was no longer part of the roster. Dan Severn came to the ring to question Owen's honesty, leading to Owen attacking Severn, and yeah, he was seemingly already out of retirement now. In the weeks that followed, Owen would deny that he was the Blue Blazer, even going as far as to have other people portray the character while Owen was in the same room or the same ring as the Blue Blazer. At one point there was even a dark-skinned Blue Blazer, but the main man who would portray the character was indeed Owen Hart. As the Blue Blazer character developed in the Attitude Era, he came across as an overbearing do-gooder who was upset with the direction that the World Wrestling Federation had gone in, and he was the only man who could save the WWF from all this edgy content that was happening on our TV screens. When you remember that Owen refused the Deborah storyline, it isn't hard to imagine that this was all contrived as some sort of backwards way to get a jab into Owen for refusing the angle, but again, we will never know. Owen did say that he legitimately no longer understood the direction that pro wrestling was going in during a late 1998 interview, and his widow Martha wrote in her book that Owen felt that the wrestling industry had passed him by at this point. Owen and Jeff would continue working as a tag team, eventually winning the WWF Tag Team Championships while the Blue Blazer stuff was kinda moved into the background. The character would make appearances every now and then. It seemed like the WWF just couldn't put this one to rest, even though it wasn't really going down that well. At least I remember not really enjoying the storyline all that much. On the pilot episode of SmackDown, which aired on April 29th, 1999, the Blue Blazer made a return, defeating Val Venus in just over 2 minutes, thanks to an assist from Jeff Jarrett and Deborah. In Owen's final WWF Raw match, he teamed up with Jeff Jarrett as the Blue Blazer to work against Val Venus and The Godfather. He was scheduled to wrestle The Godfather at WWF Over the Edge in 1999 as the Blue Blazer, but tragedy struck that night, as we all know. The Blue Blazer would turn out to be Owen's first WWF gimmick and also his final WWF gimmick. Owen was to be lowered into the ring at Over the Edge using a harness and grapple line, and while he was being lowered, Owen fell 78 feet, landing chest first on the top rope. Owen didn't survive the accident. To wrap things up, we need to ask the question, was the Blue Blazer a success in wrestling? Was the character over? Did it work? Was there good storylines and memorable matches? Unfortunately, I feel the answer is no to all these questions. Owen Hart, like many wrestlers, was better as himself with the volume turned up. And as the Blue Blazer character, Owen was either not getting big matches or, in all honesty, Owen was simply a parody. The Blue Blazer, to a certain extent, is remembered today by casual fans due to Owen's passing, basically because he was portraying the character just before the scheduled Over the Edge match. I'm guilty of it too. When I hear the Blue Blazer name, I seem to think of Over the Edge before thinking of Owen's 1988 run in the World Wrestling Federation. Fortunately though, Owen's legacy doesn't start and end with the Blue Blazer. His work as the Rocket, the King of Hearts, and even the Blackheart are well remembered by fans to this day. This, of course, isn't to say that the Blue Blazer of the late 80s didn't have fans. He did. He was exciting to watch and he was a breath of fresh air at the time, but the WWF didn't get behind Owen during this time period. Thankfully, when Owen came back to the World Wrestling Federation and eventually became obsessed with defeating Big Brother Brett, he was given a real chance to shine.